All right, so if you're here, raise your hand. Oh, you're here. You're there. Wow, look at you go. All right. So, hey everyone, welcome to Phase 3. Woo, yay! I can hear you cheering all the way from here. This marks the third completion of the phases for the story of Michael. I have invited anyone who wanted to join me and come and I hope that you enjoy this event. First off, let's recap on phases 1 and 2. In phase 1, we discussed writing as an art form, and I talked about my belief in the rules of art, and my rules of art as well. What I believe to be art, and what I feel like I need to do in order to progress as an artist and a writer. So phase 2, I talked about how discipline has a huge role in the creative field. It separates you from the rest of the crowd. I discussed the way I developed a chapter-by-chapter questionnaire that helped me stay organized about my thoughts for each chapter. And it was great to have you guys for both of those phases, and I really look forward to this event because it just really motivates me and keeps deadlines going, and it's really the inspiration that I have for completing these things on time. So thank you guys for being my deadlines and keeping me going. For phase 3, I sat down with the completed documents from phase 2 and started to edit each chapter according to my answered questionnaire. The plan of attack looked something like this. Use chapter analysis document to evaluate each chapter. From there, determine main changes to make per chapter. Rewrite those parts of the chapter. Edit grammar and sentence structure for that chapter. And then take each of these emotions or feelings or overall sense of the chapter as a whole and plot them in sequential order from beginning to end to get a rough formula, or I guess like the way the entire plot as a whole would look. And from there, I will be able to continue editing in a more general way without stressing about details. Okay, let me just say, wow, this was by far the most difficult phase that I've done for this book, including just the concepts and everything. Man, I spent over 40 hours on this phase in editing. That's just a rough estimate. I spent a lot of time and gave up opportunities to do a lot of stuff in the meantime. So it means a lot to me. But I spent a lot of time on this phase, and it led me to realize I had to streamline my methodology. It was very, very grueling. At first it was taking me 3+ hours to complete a single chapter. Given the chapter always looked better, it made me feel like I had just uncovered the base of a mountain that I was about to climb, and it was just daunting. Still kind of is, but less so now that I've completed phase 3. Looking up at this mountain, I thought to myself, what tools can I take with me that will help me accomplish this task, and which ones will just weigh me down? A good question, I thought. I stuck to basic editing for time's sake. And that just means really, well, let me explain. I did not overly worry about the story as a whole, but focused mainly on sentence structure and out-of-place text. So it was more of a mechanical working of the chapter so that it read and flowed well. By doing this, I increased the readability and flow of the content. This means basically that even if the story is terrible, which I hope it's not, a reader could theoretically get through the entire book and understand it without any miscommunication from me to the reader. Doing this reduced the amount of stress by a lot, and therefore I was more productive, allowing me to realize that I have a lot more to do with the story as a whole when I near completion. So in a general sense, I will have more work to do towards the, I guess, the release of the book than I previously thought. But I guess I just reordered my priorities a little bit because I had to get through phase 3 and I don't want to just leave it there. Okay, so this helped me realize what phase 4 will entail. As I am now done and able to take a step back, I feel as though I am at peace. I feel as though I'm at a place of solidity with the book. I know the plot. I can tell you what happens in each chapter without looking it up, and it sets me up to getting feedback, to start getting feedback from people. I'm toying with the idea of what to do for feedback, and I haven't come to a decision as of yet, but it's exciting to start thinking of the possibilities. Of course, I will let you know if there's any way you can be involved. Before I move on to questions, I briefly want to mention my plans for phase 4. And before phase 4, okay, actually, you know what, I need to go over more about what editing looked like for me. Because really there's a lot more involved than I just made it sound like. Basically, when I started editing each chapter, I started thinking ahead about chapters way in the future that did not really affect just the mechanical parts of the grammar, sentence structure, and the text in the flow of the writing. So I really just decided that I needed to focus per chapter a little bit harder and get a little bit more narrowly. And that way, I was able to complete each chapter a lot quicker and therefore felt better about it, and therefore it was more productive. Editing in the future will be better off because of this, and I feel like it will help you guys to know how I decided to do it. So I hope it does, and I hope you guys enjoy that knowledge as well. So given that, I am really excited to reread it again without as much critical thinking in mind, and not so much worry about the judgment and of my peers and readers and all that. So I feel like it's at a place now that if I were to just submit it to, you know, an agent or a publisher, they would at least be able to get through it and tell me their thoughts and give me decent feedback. And it really makes me happy to think that I've gotten this far, and that it's because really I started doing these phases, and you guys have been here to help me out, and been decent enough people to just ask me, you know, straight up how you're feeling about the book and what confuses you, and that really does help me, and that's why I really want to be able to get feedback about the book itself from you, and or at least from viewers like you too, just because that honesty helps me realize what needs to change and what keeps readers interested. And I have a story in mind, right? Like, the story of Michael means this to me. Like, it's this solid idea, but when it gets on paper, it's already lost a lot of the meaning that was originally developed in my head. So I have to get it out to people, get their reaction, and compare that with the reaction I feel when I think about it. And when you write something down, like in the first phase, I guess, when that was completed, and you write something down and you reread it, it's just like, no, that's not quite what I had in mind, and you know, I just don't know if that's gonna work. But, you know, get to phase 2, write it down, get it to phase 3, edit it so that anybody could read, and then at phase 4, phase 5, whatever it ends up being, come back, look at it, and decide how can I get that to go back to the original idea while keeping the reader interested, how to keep it flowing, and how to keep this being a complete story from start to finish. I had to flip hands because this is actually my left hand, but it looks like my right hand. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, having a complete story that starts here and ends here, you just kind of look at it. You're like, wow, that's a complete story, and you can build on it. You can take stuff away. But really, I didn't have to do a whole lot this time. But what I did do, and I don't want you to think that I didn't have to do a whole lot of editing. I mean, there was a great bit of excluding I had to do, and cutting out, and including, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that doesn't fit there. So I took this sentence and put it in this paragraph, took this paragraph, moved it over here, and you know, there was some pretty influential pieces of text that moved around and now support their following or preceding text a lot better, and makes for a more effective description of that circumstance or of that climax for that chapter. That's another thing I need to write an article about. And you know, oh, and I also wanted to see what you guys thought about the speech article. Did you guys see the speech, how to write a speech? I just came across that while in one of my chapters. It was very on my mind at night, and I just couldn't think. I was like, okay, when I get to the end of this chapter, I'm gonna look up how to do that, and you know, just look at some speeches on YouTube and just see like what about that audibly sounds amazing, what keeps me interested, and how can I put that into text and have somebody imagine what I'm seeing right now. I mean, it's not easy to do, and I'm not claiming that I have the exact, you know, working of how to do it, but I wanted to see what you guys thought about that as well. Okay, so you are there. Well, I'm about to get to these questions, and some of the ones that you're asking me now will be covered in this question section. So let's get to it right after I briefly describe what's going to happen in phase 4. So, and I hope you're with me over there, HD camera, so stay with me, all right? Okay. Before I move on to the questions, I briefly wanted to mention my plans for phase 4. Before, I had phase 4 as the reread chapter, meaning it would be like phase 2, but it would look at the book as a whole, and you know, instead of breaking it down per chapter, it would be looking at it from beginning to end, and possibly rearranging chapters, reinventing characters' biography, I guess, or like their descriptions and where it takes place, and seeing if there's a better way to do that. You know, and then describing, like I said originally, plot each chapter like a graph. Okay, so like this, you know, like, so there's starts here maybe, and this is chapter 1 has this much emotion or maybe this talks about Michael this much, and so it's about at this level. But you know, chapter 3 or 4, we get to here, and the emotion has gotten high, and okay, maybe we're about to reach some type of climax, but it only mentions certain characters. So it would plot like that per chapter over the timeline, and give me a graph, you know, a wavelength of, this would be the formula or structure of the book. And this is how I'm looking at the book as a whole, because it allows me to picture it kind of like maybe a song, or, you know, it has the beginning and end, a structure, you know, the traditional rising action, climax, falling action, exposition, the classical model. And I can see, you know, maybe I do follow that same model, and maybe I have a little bit more thrown in between to just kind of per chapter. Maybe each chapter has its own little wavelength of formula. So this is how I view it. I'm a musician, and so I always think of things rhythmically, and think of melodies and all that stuff as well. But I also trained for film and video, as you guys know from the Hero of Time, so I just know how visually things will work, but